Welcome back to Bound News Network. We're doing a special edition featuring tracking the Hurricane Henri as it makes its way towards Long Island. The situation has become quite grave at this time. We're seeing a lot of different conditions that are making it a lot more favorable for the strengthening of this storm. So here we are, almost 3 a.m. On Sunday morning, and we anticipate landfall very quite imminent within the next few hours. As the various officials, government officials in the state of New York have already issued different types of warnings and state of emergencies in the region. We are tracking this storm as basically a final proclamation or final issuance of trying to get out of the area before this storm actually hits. This is a very, very organized Category 1 hurricane that is actually entering the region. We're very, very concerned for the region of Suffolk County near Long Island, all the way to areas such as Mastic Beach. We're concerned about the low-lying boroughs of Brooklyn, as well as Queens, as well as Manhattan region. And we're actually anticipating that there's going to be a significant amount of rainfall as the system interacts with what's called a trough in the eastern United States. And with that said, we are anticipating that this system will actually have prolific rainfall in the region vicinity of possibly a little bit north or in the region of Philadelphia very, very shortly in the very early morning hours. So that's going to be one of the first signs that this hurricane is actually coming on land. You can actually see the strengthening of the storm. We have been tracking the system, and as we take a look at the previous report, we actually saw two key indicators of the storm actually strengthening. We're seeing what's actually happening with the pressure. The pressure is now at about 987 millibars. When we first reported, we were looking at about 991 millibars. So there has been a decrease in pressure, which we mentioned before. It's usually an indicator of the system actually making a very, very concerted effort to actually strengthen its eye wall, tighten its structure, become a lot more organized core as it prepares to make landfall. If we take a look at the positioning, we're a little bit concerned about anything with respect to any kinds of landmass on the northeast to the eastern side. Generally speaking, as a hurricane makes landfall, the more severe gusting winds, and in this particular case with a Category 1 hurricane, we're looking at gusts anywhere from 75 to 85 miles per an hour, and it's going to be a significant amount of rainfall as well as very strong hurricane force winds, most notably on the northeastern side and the northeastern side of this hurricane as it actually makes landfall. So with that said, we're looking at regions more along the lines of more severe weather along that track that we have on this map. This is not necessarily where it will be making landfall. We anticipate more along the Long Island area, but this is just an area that we are more concerned about more severe damage due to very, very powerful localized winds. Being that this section is actually over water, we're concerned about very powerful water spouts that might be developing in the storm as it makes its landfall, which is very common with hurricanes. They will have small tornadoes, and in this case, water spouts off land, which can, once they actually make landfall, can create a significant amount of property damage very, very quickly. And because we're dealing with nighttime, you will not be able to generally see them until they're actually on top of you. So the water spouts that actually venture onto land can be very, very dangerous. So that's why we wanted to make a special note here. If you have the option at this particular time before this hurricane actually makes landfall to head west, possibly towards Albany or possibly even towards Syracuse, just get out of the way, and you are anywhere east of New Haven, by all means you should definitely try to evacuate this area. having gone through 5 hurricanes, a Category 1 hurricane is definitely not a force that you want to reckon with, especially considering that this area of New England has not experienced a storm of this nature in almost 30 years. So if you do have the option to get out of the way. So that's the only thing that we can actually say as far as making a recommendation to try and get out of the way of this storm. The more severe area along this section that we have drawn off, we anticipate will be more severe, stronger gusts of winds, and more prolific rain. But we do anticipate that, based on the track of the system at this time, we do see that one of the first signs of landfall, and we can actually see that outer squall making its way out from the core of the storm, will be more in the region of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, and you can anticipate rainfall to the tune of 2 to 3 inches per an hour in the very early morning, possibly in the region of Philadelphia. Keep in mind that, being that Tropical Storm Fred or Depression Fred, depending on the level of severity, depending as it moved through the New England area, led to about 6 inches of rain in the New England area just only a matter of a few days ago. So this ground is actually very, very saturated. So if we have prolific rain to the tune of 10 to 12 inches in this region, then you're looking at severe flooding, and also keep in mind of storm surge. Storm surge in this situation is anticipated to be anywhere from 3 to 6 feet in some areas, and this is all coastal area of New England, coastal area of New York, Suffolk County, Massachusetts. So we're very concerned at this particular time. But if you can, at this particular time, make a decision to get out, or without before the more heavy and torrential rain actually starts in the region, and not only rain but also other elements that are hidden at nighttime, such as potential tornadoes that touch down, as well as water spouts off the coast, and there's also possibility of hail, and also very, very severe wind gusts that could lead to severe property damage. One of the things that we are also concerned about is not only that the pressure has actually decreased by a few millibars, but the system has actually sped up. When we did our first report earlier today, system was moving at about 17 miles per an hour north northeast. Now it's actually sped up quite a bit, to about 21 miles per an hour heading north. So it's actually accelerating slightly, relatively speaking, and also the pressure is dropping, which seems to suggest that it's utilizing quite a bit of the forces in the area. Unfortunately, one thing that is not in its favor is extremely warm sea surface temperatures, because it's a little bit further north, and it's not prime sea surface temperatures for a hurricane of this nature to actually feed off of the very, very warm temperatures of the ocean to increase. But however, there are other elements, such as the trough to eastern United States, as well as a ridge in the central of the Atlantic, that could be helping with venting of latent heat in the system, which helps to minimize any kind of shearing forces as the hurricane makes its way towards Suffolk County, most likely, and the shores of Connecticut. So this is definitely something that we want to watch. We take a closer look at what's actually happening with respect to this system. We can see hurricane watch for the region, for extending all the way through eastern Long Island, into along the shores of Connecticut into Massachusetts, with tropical storm warnings extending down into the region of New Jersey and also into Massachusetts. So we're continuing to monitor this system this hurricane as it makes landfall. Keep in mind that there's going to be a significant amount of rainfall and possibly flash flooding, and of course we're concerned about storm surge as it makes its way in. So if you have a chance to head west, not north, but if you're actually in the realm of Long Island or Connecticut or Massachusetts, trying to get out of the cone path of the cone of this storm, this hurricane, would be a great it would be a great time for you just to simply get out of the way. One of the main concerns you'll have is a loss of utilities. There are going to be power outages, depending on the level of damage as a result of storm surge, as well as flooding, as well as down power lines. You may be without utilities for days and days, possibly weeks. In some cases, when a hurricane of this nature, just tracking several hurricanes that impacted the state of Florida, it was not uncommon for utilities to be down for 3 to 4 weeks. So, with that said, if you have the option and the fortune to be able to exit and get out of the path of this storm, then by all means head west, possibly towards Syracuse or Albany, New York, to try and get out of the path of this storm. Even though not many people consider that a Category 1 hurricane may not be as threatening, it is. This storm, due to the nature of it coming on board land, also different forces that are in the area, coupled with the fact of extreme ground saturation as a result of the previous system Fred that brought 6 inches of rain to the area. There is going to be an increased likelihood of flooding in the region. So by all means, we want to make sure that we did this additional report just prior to it becoming too late for anyone to actually exit out of this out of the cone, simply because the weather is going to start deteriorating very, very quickly, and the roads will become too treacherous for any kind of driving out of the storm. So, with that said, if you're actually in the region, make sure that you have enough water stored for at least several days in case you lose access to utilities. Also, food provisions, and also simply buckle down and prepare for the very worst. With hurricanes, you have to anticipate for the very worst as far as flooding, also damage to local power lines, as well as tree limbs that may knock out power for weeks upon weeks. So, with that said, we wanted to make sure that we got this additional weather report out. We're taking a closer look at Hurricane Henri as it makes its way landfall, anticipating that landfall will be somewhere around Suffolk County, extending all the way to southeastern Connecticut will be impacted by this storm. Keep in mind, the squalls are going to be bringing a lot of rainfall in a very, very short period of time. So, coupled with that, as well as a storm surge, you should anticipate quite a bit of flooding in the region as this system makes its way. If we recall from the days of Superstorm Sandy, quite possibly there's going to be a significant amount of flooding and casualty as a result of the flooding, and also down power lines. It's very common for people who try to travel just shortly after the storm makes its way inland, and electrocution becomes an issue. So by all means, please do not travel on roads that appear to be safe. However, power lines are a serious threat, especially with the element of electrocution. So please heed to all of these warnings. We wish, our thoughts and our prayers are for the residents of Long Island, Queens, Brooklyn, New York, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, and Connecticut, as Hurricane Henri makes its way on board into this region. We just want to make sure that we covered all the bases with this report. You should anticipate prolific bands of rain very, very shortly. Within only a matter of a few hours, we do see from the water vapor infrared as the system makes its way inland that we're seeing very powerful squalls of rainfall extending away from the core, and that signals the fact that it is going to be venturing on land very, very shortly, and weather conditions are going to deteriorate very, very quickly. As we anticipate possibly significant rainfall in the region of Philadelphia in the very early morning hours, very, very dense, heavy rainfall, and coupled with the fact that there is a trough that is helping to sort of incentivize release of venting of this system, which will help to minimize any kind of shearing force that will prohibit the storm from actually strengthening. Even though it is accelerating, the pressure is dropping. So that is two elements that we're a little bit concerned about. And just looking at the infrared, we can actually see how much more organized the core of this storm has actually become in only a matter of 6 or 7 hours. So please be aware of the power of a Category 1 hurricane, and if you can get out of its path and anticipate the worst, which is storm surge anywhere from 6 to 8 feet, possibly in some regions, with very prolific rainfall, anywhere from 10 to 12 inches of rainfall in some regions of the path of this storm. And as the system moves further inland, it will be downgraded to a tropical storm, but it will still be inundating and thrashing the region with very, very significant amount of rainfall in the region, which is going to increase flooding, possibly in the region of the hills of Massachusetts, as well as it makes its way further into the New England area. So we have taken a closer look at Hurricane Henri. Please make sure that you prepare in every way possible to protect yourself, remain safe, and our hearts and our prayers are out for those as this system makes its way landfall. Thank you. Have a good night.